Good Wednesday morning, everybody. Here on Between the Ears, I'm Schuyler. That is Christopher Hall. We've got a WVU football schedule now that we can finally dive into. A quick couple of notes here. Penn State, obviously, the home opener, which we already knew. Albany the following week. You go to Pitt for your first road game, in quotes. Big 12 home opener against Kansas. Senior Day down the line, November 23rd against UCF, and then you wrap up the season on November 30th against Texas Tech. And heck, who knows, you might be playing for back-to-back trips to Texas there at the end of the year. So let's break this thing down into segments here, Chris. Let's go with just the non-conference first. Penn State, Albany at Pitt. I mean, pretty favorable setup there you got in diving into it. I think the Pitt game is going to be a noon game. The reason I say that, the Pirates are playing at home that weekend, and that night they play at 6:40. So I would assume they don't want a crap ton of traffic to be in Pittsburgh coming out in and out at the same time. So I would imagine that one's going to
No
be
one's going
noon
to a Pirates game in
kickoff.
September. They're out of the
Hey,
playoffs in
listen,
June. Come
don't you
on.
even start with me. Don't you even. I've got my hot. All right. Anyways, they're going to be playing in a NL Central race. Okay, they're going to be playing meaningful games this September. It's not going to just be the regular crap. So it's going to be a packed PNC Park. It's going to be a packed Acrisure Stadium. They've got to adjust according or plan accordingly. So, anyways, your thoughts on the non-conference part of this schedule and just kind of how it all sets up.
Obviously, you like to at least switch Albany and Penn State, get that game under their belt, but is what it is. Starting off Penn State again. It was a physical matchup last year. Expects to be physical again this year. It is a nice little break there before another physical matchup rivalry game against Pitt. So, I mean, on paper, it doesn't look terrible. Most programs are playing a premier. Oh, not most programs, but you're seeing programs play like a premier opener or a premier non-conference game. West Virginia has two with Pitt. I know Pitt's not great, but it's still a rivalry game, still going to be physical. So I always, we've talked about this schedule now for years. Just playing 11 Power Five opponents is brutal throughout the season. Luckily, with Country Road Trust, they're able to retain their talent and create depth. That does help, but you got to have the talent in the two deep and sometimes three deep to find that consistency to win and be a contender in the Big 12. So it's obviously going to be tough. Really concerned with Penn State with all the hype going around this team. Definitely don't have them beating Penn State. They just haven't shown that they can beat a caliber of a team like that yet. So you kind of worry about that just because if they lose, it's a letdown, and then you kind of walk through Albany, how fired up, they should be fired up against Pitt, but Pitt's going to be on that revenge tour after the seasons they had, so we'll kind of see how they look going into the third week of the season. So Penn State concerns me just for the emotional loss if they were to lose that game, and then talked about it last year, and we've talked recently even with the basketball team. There's been very little. How do they handle that success? What if Pitt starts off 0-2, West Virginia starts off at 2-0, and then they kind of sleepwalk at Pitt and get punched in the mouth? So a lot of intriguing storylines could happen in that first three games. It's kind of what happens when you have some good matchups. But I think that first game isn't an indicator of the season, but man, how they handle success or defeat in that could definitely be uh, a key part to the season to start it.
Yeah, I think the good thing is though, I mean, you saw it last year. They lose the Penn State game, they bounce back and they take care of business against Duquesne, which is in the same spot as the Albany game, and then they come back the following week and manage to get through that backyard brawl with a backup quarterback and Nico Markiel. So I think it sets up well. You again, like you just touched on, you've got guys that are experienced now. They played in these games against Penn State and Pitt. They know how to handle the ups and downs of going from playing a top team like Penn State to an FCS team back up to a Pitt team. So I think that works in your favor. The thing that I'm most concerned about here in this first month or so of the season is that start of the Big 12 schedule. And it's the exact same setup that you had 2 years ago where you lost to Pitt, you go home, you play Kansas, you think you're going to walk right through them, and you found out that that's not the case. Kansas came to play that day
Little,
to go
little,
to
little
overtime.
different scenario. Kansas wasn't what we know as Kansas of now. That
Right,
was just the
but this
beginning.
is a much better Kansas team.
Is
I,
it?
yeah, yes, absolutely,
I think
absolutely.
they're about the same.
I don't know. I don't know. Jalen Daniels experience. He's
He's been
this.
hurt. Look, he's been hurt. He was experienced before. It's the
He
same.
has. He
It's the
has.
same Kansas team. They're going to be good without a doubt. But same Kansas team. They haven't really improved that
I
much.
just think that's not
This
the.
is a much better West Virginia team than it was 2 years ago, too. So
Oh yeah, absolutely. I just think it's a tough spot to open up Big 12 play with when you're coming off an emotional win or loss either way against Pitt,
who's a good Big 12 team to open up with in this league?
Cincinnati.
What's the layup? Is it?
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
Cincinnati is going to want to beat West Virginia. West Virginia fans may not
Or
care that much
UCF.
about Cincinnati. So
UCF. UCF still trying to build their roster
they
up.
still
I mean,
don't like Like you got to think of it this way: those programs don't like West Virginia. West Virginia could care less about those programs. They're going to get their all. They're going to give their all. West Virginia should give their all, but it's a different. It's just different. It's a different scenario.
I would
It's like
just say I'd rather have other teams.
in that scenario, we're Penn State and they're West Virginia, right? Like we don't like Penn State. Penn State doesn't even barely know we exist. All right, but never beat them. All right, kind of the same scenario. You can think of it like we're going to go play Marshall in a sense. Like they're going to give everything that they got to win that game. So yeah.
So you're chalking up Kansas as a W?
Oh yeah,
Rock chalk up the win? Okay.
yeah. Protect home field.
So Oklahoma State, the first road game, and really, in my opinion, the first true game that you're leaving uh, a home atmosphere, I guess, because Pitt, that's going to be probably dominated by West Virginia fans. So really, I mean, it sets up nice that you don't have to deal with a road crowd until October 5th. But then again, it's also it can backfire on you too. You're not used to it. You go out there for your first game. That's a tough place to play your first game. A team that's probably going to be towards the top of the Big 12. But I will say, if there's a time you want to play Oklahoma State, it's early because as we've seen over the years, they don't start out very well for whatever reason. They lose to teams like Central Michigan. They struggle and lose to South Alabama. They take a little while to get going. Once that train gets rolling, it's hard to stop. So I think getting him second game of Big 12 play is probably about as good as you're going to get. I mean, and you also too you have the bye week to go into that game with, so you have a little time to rest and prepare going into that.
Yeah, it's always tough to play a Mike Gundy team. They're trying to still figure out their path in the NIL process. So they've lacked consistency. So, same as West Virginia through the transfer portal era. And like you said, they've been coming on late in the season. So yeah, probably a good time as any to get Oklahoma State. We'll see. I'm not sold on them beating Oklahoma State. I know they beat them out there 2 years ago, but they definitely improved, last year when they had Ollie Gordon and all that good stuff. But these road games, and really my theme with West Virginia is they've got to show consistency, and they got to get consistency on the outside from a receiver. You're not returning anybody that had over 500-yard receiving last year. Obviously, some of those guys had their moments throughout the season, but if you're going to contend for a Big 12 and you're trying to get that double-digit win, you got to get guys at least close to the 1,000-yard mark. So they've got to find some consistency. The biggest turnaround from what last year was obviously Garrett Green, his ability to keep his eyes downfield, beat teams with his legs, just running the ball. So if they can find any consistency on the outside and get a playmaker on the outside, get somebody who can make plays downfield, yeah, then we'll probably look at this game going into that game a lot differently. If they're looking at 3-1 and they found some guys on the outside, then yeah, we can probably start having some better conversations with the offense and where they're heading as the season goes along.
So yeah, I mean, after Oklahoma State, they come back home. They got two against Iowa State, Kansas State. Then they go out to Tucson to take on Arizona, Noah Fafita, and that that crew out there that I mean, who knows what they're going to look like? They say they're mostly going to stick together. They're key guys, but it's January. That
Gotta get through
yeah,
spring.
you got to get through spring, get
I'm
through
sure
that
some
last
people are going to be unhappy and it can start to
transfer portal.
unravel really fast. And you'll have, the quarterback say, I'm a Wildcat forever, blah, blah, blah. But will he have help? Will he have any chemistry along the offensive line? Will there be a
Coaching
new
matters
coach?
too. They lost a really damn good coach in Jed Fish.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that game that looked like it could be a premier matchup all of a sudden looks like nah. But in that case, your West Virginia's also traveling all the way across the country. Um, First time going to Arizona, that's not benefited. That's historically that's not been good for West Virginia. So even it could be chaotic. That could be a night that West Virginia brand's big, and that's going to probably bring out some fans. It could be a night game. That's one of the tricks that we have right now is we don't know if it's a night game, an
yeah,
afternoon game. If it's
that factors into
noon,
these
if
predictions.
it's noon out there, it'd be a 3 o'clock kickoff here. So um, West Virginia does have that kind of advantage where it wouldn't be, I guess, as early. I don't think they would acclimate themselves in the time zone in such a short period of time. So I don't think it would be necessary, but that to me, these road games are going to be tough. I do have them stealing one of these road games right now. You just don't know which one it could be again because we just don't know the full rosters. But that's going to be a tougher game whether they're 0-4, 0-5, whatever it is at that point. Even if they're the one win, it's going to be tough just 'cause from a traveling standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, Arizona's the toughest one that they're going to have all year, and I mean, you look at that. I mean, it's just from top to bottom. It just seems like home game, home game, home game, home game, and you get that long trip to Arizona. You come back and you play on the road again, but you're only making the quick bus trip over to Cincinnati, and that's a fairly
Well,
easy road trip for West Virginia fans, and Mountaineer fans will take. I don't know if they'll take over Nippert Stadium, probably not necessarily to the extent that they will up at Acrisure, but there'll be a good contingent of Blue
wouldn't be
Raiders
surprised
there.
if that's not moved to Paul Brown. Well, I
Paul
guess
Brown, yeah.
whatever. Yeah, is it so called Paul Brown or whatever company?
Oh no, that's a good question actually.
Whatever company took over the
Yeah,
naming rights, good chance it might get moved there. Ticket sales, whatever. I'm sure Cincinnati would love to have it Nippert Stadium to have it, that comfy confines there. It's a little
yeah.
tight in there. I'm sure they'd like to have it there, but it'd be interesting to see where that played at. And that's definitely not going to be an easy matchup whatsoever.
No, and then Baylor, UCF to wrap up. So, and then you had, like I said, Texas Tech to end the year. But it's a it's an interesting schedule. Um, let me ask you this: if West Virginia were to get to 10 wins, what does the path look like? Obviously, I think we would all probably just go ahead and throw Penn State in there as one of the two losses. If you had to pick another team other than Oklahoma State that you'd be most worried about, who would it be?
Um, I think Iowa State. Um, Rocco Beck
They
had a
don't get
lot,
enough
got a
love.
lot of
Yeah,
lot of experience. Matt Campbell always puts a tough team together. How they start will matter. Um, and how West Virginia attacks because if they have a slow start, they started getting on, midway through the season and towards the end of the year with Rocco. He was only a freshman. I'm sure they expect, that expectations are a little higher this year. So it'd be interesting to see how that team fills out. But Iowa State, I think Kansas State, you can put right there in that mix the following week. Might be a tougher matchup because playing Iowa State, a physical game, you welcome in a physical team
really.
in Kansas State. So,
That's three straight tough games.
right.
Oklahoma State, Iowa State, Kansas State. Like
And
that's the
then
gauntlet right there.
who's their quarterback going to be after Will Howard left? That's the intriguing one. Kleiman's obviously done a great job, and you might be catching them at the right time, where they may not be. They might start to be clicking, but bringing them to Morgantown, they may not be able to. They might not be fully clicking in Morgantown. So, if you can get through that stretch right there, with just one loss, you got to feel good going the rest of the way through the season.
Yeah, I mean the way I'm looking at it, like again,
Although at Texas Tech depends what they're fighting for at that point in time. That's never an easy place to play either. If they're 8, 9 wins at that point, and they could be vying for, you
just
know,
as much.
if West Virginia's only one loss in the conference, and you got 2 losses going in at Texas Tech. I'm sure they would love them. Is West Virginia already solidified in the Big 12 championship at that point? Um, we got to kind of see how it all shakes out because previously, it was like Oklahoma's probably going to be unscathed or one loss. And
Don't have to
as
worry
of
about that anymore.
or Texas as of last year, I guess. But who is going to be the top team? They're Utah. They're going to be in the mix somewhere. They're not on the schedule, so it's who. This might be a year where everyone may suffer a couple losses and be in a Big 12 championship. Just don't know. But Utah probably more likely is going to be in that mix. So if West Virginia is going to go that far, they might end up be playing Utah. But it's a wait and see. So much of this is wait and see. But I think if you can get through that tough 4 game stretch, starting with Oklahoma State, with just at 3-1, that would be incredible. Absolutely incredible. And again, it goes back to, well, how do they handle that success? Because at that point, if you're looking at the schedule, just from this standpoint, I know there's some optimism around Central Florida for whatever reason. Um, did they handle the success right? Did they go out and play the way they dictated to get to that point? To wait and see. There's some big questions around this program right now that, for them to take the next step, uh, they're going to have to handle success. They're going to have short memories, whether it's good or bad, and continue to fight forward. Because what we've seen from them last year was a much better step in the right direction. But at the same time, like I said, you got to find consistency on offense. And we haven't even talked about the defense yet. I mean, we have in previous um, shows, but defensively, where are you at? So there's a lot of holes to fill, I think, in a lot of areas for West Virginia. And I think my optimism with West Virginia right now is Garrett Green because he was the difference maker last year, and he's definitely going to be the difference maker this year. But if he doesn't have help, he can be contained with a lot of these coaches in the Big 12.
Well, I mean, my thing too is like I'm somebody you got to prove it to me twice for me to believe in something, and I'm not trying to discredit what Neil or that football team did this past season, but I mean, let's be honest, the first 4 years pretty rough. Like you had 3 losing seasons. Your only winning year came in COVID, which you had 10 games. You didn't play a full schedule. You didn't play in front of crowds. Like that was just a weird year. This is the first year where they've really shown anything of like positivity and that the
The
program's
first
heading
year
in the
they
right
were able to
direction.
retain their roster too. So it's
Yeah.
not like it was. I mean, after
No,
2020, they lose King,
right.
they lose Daryl Porter. I mean, they lost
They
everybody. So
they did
it's
lose a
not
lot.
like it was like they were doing a terrible job coaching. They just lost all their players. So
And
this
it's
is the
just
this is the first time under Neil Brown that he'll have consecutive seasons where he gets to retain his roster. First time going into 6 years. This is his first time.
yeah,
So
that's
that's
crazy to think.
insane. That's insane. So you can't really judge them on that. We have to judge them like now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, okay, they had a little success. Let's handle it. You didn't really do anything on a national scale, but you turned a corner where you actually retained your talent. You're able to retain your talent thus far. Got to get through spring, see what happens, and kind of go from there. See, they brought in Beanie last year. They had Mike Lockhart from the previous season. When he came in Virginia Tech, became a great player. Now he's off to the SEC. But they were deep there. You're gonna have to find some guys at linebacker in the secondary and kind of go from there. I do like the new setup defensively. Leslie's the D coordinator. That's it. He's not handling anything else. I think that can go a long way to kind of help him scheme and kind of give a whole overview of the defense. And Shadon doing everything in the secondary. I think that kind of helps things a little bit defensively. Not That's not against Dante Wright. I just think there was 2 guys in the secondary, much needed. But I think right now the way they have set up is good. But there's talent. There's young talent. Just like the receivers are young talent. There's young talent in the defense. They just gotta have a good off season and then produce when the lights are on.
Yeah, I just still like, and I'm not trying to hammer Neil or anybody. Like I said, I tip their hat to what they did this year. I think you have to be cautiously optimistic with this team. You can see the things that they're starting to potentially build. You can see why there's a lot of optimism and why there's a lot of hype from the fan base. But for
They're
me,
young. They're still young.
they're young. You have to prove it to me twice. If you show that last year wasn't just an anomaly, and you can back that up with another 9 or 10 win season, or even an 8-win year, because I mean, let's be honest, like 8-win seasons, I know it's not great. It's not something that the fans want or think that it's crazy, but that's pretty dang good around these parts.
No,
Is to win
eight
eight
eight wins
games.
on it with this roster right now is a good
Yeah.
team.
Yeah.
100%. 11
And
Power
with a
5
tougher
team.
schedule. That is a much tougher schedule than what they
The
just went
feature
through
running
last year.
back's only going to be a sophomore. It's only Garrett Green's second year. I mean, really, when you're potentially looking at like on paper right now, you're looking at 2 years away from being a legitimate contender for the Big 12 with Nico in his second. Now, he could do it next year because if, look, these receivers progress pretty well
They can elevate them.
this season. The next year, then Nico's going to have some help. And it doesn't have to be all the Nico show. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like what Garrett's doing now. Now, these guys can make a really big jump this year and they could be legitimate contenders this year. I'm not seeing it because they haven't done anything yet. Like Hudson Clement, great. And I don't understand PFF, their rankings or whatever they got going on. But his biggest game was against Duquesne. He had some nice game. He had a pretty good game in the bowl game, but look, that's a couple of games in a 13 game span. So it goes back to consistency. What are these guys going to do? We've heard a lot about Gallagher. He's made some moves, but he hasn't had a big game. So like,
And
it's
they
got
and they
they
really
got to
didn't get
produce.
him in the receiver role. It was just get him the ball because he was
Right.
a playmaker. They need to get him to run actual routes downfield, fight off of press coverage. Like there's a lot of development there with Rodney that no one's really talking about just because they got him the football. There's a lot of reasons to be excited about Rodney Gallagher as a receiver
Right.
because the
You
kid
bring
is
in Jaden
phenomenal.
Bray. I know a lot of people are excited about Jaden Bray, but there's a kid that I don't even think he had 400 yards receiving last year. So you got there's talent, but can that talent, rise every single week? Can they,
Yeah.
you want a bunch of players making plays, but there's got to be that guy.
Someone's
Like
got to stick out.
it doesn't have to be a Stedman Bailey per se or a Kevin White, but you got to have some guys. Like you got to have guys pushing that 1,000 yard mark, and they just haven't been close. So until you get some playmakers, you got playmakers at running back, but they're not gonna be able to make plays. Saw with Eddie Brown, where he just had to fight and fight and fight and fight to get those 1,000 yard seasons. And that's great, but we saw the record because they couldn't get anything over the top. Got a quarterback who can do it, just gotta find the receivers to be consistent.
So what are we talking about here, record wise? I mean, I know it's January 30th or 31st, but I mean, we got to throw our way too early record predictions out there. I'm going 8-4. I think that I'm being a little conservative on that, honestly, because even though this is a tougher schedule, there's still a lot of questions, as you said. I think that this is definitely a team that can win 9+ games and be in the mix for the Big 12 title. I'm going on the conservative side for now, going 8-4, because there's just so much unknowns at this point, not only with West Virginia, but those that are on the schedule, those that are in the Big 12. A lot of things can happen with the coaching changes and the transfer portal. A lot of things can change. So I'm going 8-4 right now. That'll more than likely change and be ticked up a notch or two come August when we sit down and actually do our actual game by game predictions. But that's what I'm going with for now.
Yeah, so this is our first one. We'll probably have a post spring,
Yeah,
midsummer.
we're gonna have it. It's like the
We're
mock
gonna
drafts, right?
find,
We're gonna have
right?
these
We're
every
gonna have
every week.
multiple things change. It's a very fluid situation
Record
now.
predictions 1.0.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm 8-4. I think it's very conservative. There's no hot take here. Just everything I said. We got to find consistency. Just got to be consistent on both sides of the ball, all three phases of the game. If they want to be a legitimate Big 12 contender, I don't have them even as a dark horse contender right now. Like just not sniffing the Big 12 championship at all. So
Hold on, I'm
eight,
gonna stop you
eight,
there. I'm gonna stop you there before people start clicking off and getting pissed off at you. Remember, this is coming from the guy that just picked West Virginia 8-4, and everyone said he was probably crazy. I don't think many people said you were going to pick 8-4. You picked them 8-4 when they were picked to finish 14th in the Big 12. You also picked West Virginia's basketball record exactly last year. So just saying.
this isn't the final, so we can't use it.
Right, right. But just don't be
But
getting
yeah,
mad and clicking off because he says 8-4. I say 8-4. We're being conservative here. If they get
yeah.
through the offseason and there's no major portal losses or anything, that'll probably automatically just go ahead and kick
And
up the nine.
again, it could like I would love to be proven wrong and them to win 10 games.
Yeah.
If they win 10 games, they're in the Big 12 championship more likely. I would love to be proven wrong for them to beat Penn State. Absolutely. West Virginia wouldn't want to see that one.
And our opinions will also
Um,
change too, seeing them
as the
what they look
season
like in
goes on.
spring and
Yeah.
even in fall camp. So
But for me, it's probably not going to veer too much off because here's the thing. I've seen them look really good in practice. And
and
in
they've
the
not done well.
21 season, they looked really good in fall camp. Caught everything, deep balls over the middle. And what did they do in the game? Dropped everything. It can definitely take you for a loop, but there's certain things you can look for. Saw it last year, but you just got to get some size on that outside and see, just kind of see where it takes you. I don't know if they have the bodies. Cole Taylor could be that X factor. I know
Yes,
we
he
talked
can.
about it.
Oh boy, can he.
But again, there's plenty of potential for them to go on a run. 100%. There's plenty of potential. Just got to see it. They're still very young. This was, you know, next year with Garrett Green. If they had Garrett Green, say all these players were in their third year with Garrett Green's in his second year, then you'd be kind of looking at like, all right, may have something.
That's what sucks
That
about it.
is if these guys had produced their sophomore year. They're just coming in their second year. So how good are these guys going to be? Is it going to be a sophomore slump, or are they going to surprise some people? And I think a lot of them can surprise people because there's so much talent out there. My only concern is just kind of like it was last year. You didn't have consistency from one player, and you didn't have necessarily have consistency from the unit. I think if you can get some consistency from the unit as a whole, you'll be all right. But for me, for them to be a contender, you got to have at least one guy that's going to go make you a play on the outside. Just one guy. You have it in Jaheim in the backfield, obviously CJ as well. There's other guys that's probably going to be in the mix. Jalen Anderson's still on the team, so he can see, and we've seen that he can pop off big plays as well. So there's playmakers in the backfield, 100%. Defense, back to defense, middle linebacker, the linebacker position is going to be an issue. Very thin right now, same in the secondary, very young, very thin. Um, how good are they? How fast is Trotter after his injury? How good is he still going to be?
Latham.
Same thing with Latham. So there's a lot of questions that have to be answered, and unfortunately, we won't get a lot of those answers until week one. Like we can
Yeah.
watch all the practice we want, doesn't matter. So we won't get a lot of answers till week one. Even then, when I look back at last year at Penn State, a lot of my questions were answered week one. How physical they were in that first game. They were conservative for a lot of reasons. They won't be as conservative. So we'll have some of those questions answered early. Can these guys be playmakers? Won't
And
necessarily
I,
mean they won't be throughout the season, but that's going to be a big stage to get up there and say, "Hey, we're here, and we're going to make some plays this year and go for the title,
and I think
Big
too.
12 title, not national title." Not getting that far ahead whatsoever.
The Penn State game. The Penn State game. I mean, everyone's writing it off as a loss, and I probably more than likely am too. But like there's a chance for everything, right? I mean, college football is crazy,
100%.
but
West Virginia can beat Penn State, but then
and
2 weeks
here's
later lose the pit. Like
right.
that's college football in a
But
nutshell.
here's the
It's
thing
crazy.
about that Penn State game, like you just said last year, they're kind of conservative because they really didn't know what they had in Garrett Green. They had no idea what he could do as the full time
They
starter.
they knew they just that defense is different.
It's
That
nasty.
defense
I
that
mean,
defense was loaded last year, so they didn't want him to go out there. It was his first start. It was his
yeah.
first legitimate start as a West Virginia quarterback. So they're not going to go out there and he ends up throwing two or
But
three
now
hundred.
he's got a year of experience.
Yeah,
So
so
like
they're going to let it rip. They were
how
going to let
much
it rip that first game.
I think they're going to be able to keep that game close. I really, really do. I think they'll have a chance to keep or to not only keep it close but win it. I mean, and
And
maybe
it's
find a
probably
way
going
to
to come down to someone having to make a
make a
play
play. Yep.
final minutes of the game, and that's one of the questions. Will they rise to the occasion or will they shrink?
If they win that game, just saying.
How do they handle the success?
It,
Just saying.
yes.
When they went 4-1 last year,
Yeah.
look, they suffered some injuries in that process, but they did not handle success very well.
If they win
They've
that
just
game,
talked about it. I don't want to say in nauseum, but they've talked about it. And
yeah.
it's something that they've worked on, and you can go around the country. It's a problem everywhere. It's not a West Virginia thing. It's a problem everywhere. That's why Alabama was Alabama. They had the target on their back for how long? It still won at a high rate. Georgia's kind of feeling their way through that right now. They're playing at a high level, targets on their back. Talent has a lot to do with that. But even if you have talent and you don't play it out, if you don't play it, giving 100% and taking your opponent serious, we've seen bad teams beat good teams because of it. Pitt has a very good for being bad and teams overlooking them and then getting some wins over some ranked opponents over its time.
Yeah, they like to ruin people's years. That's for sure. I mean,
Yeah,
I
they're a
just,
conference. They're a conference. They're a conference killer.
I just, I don't think that the Penn State game is necessarily going to be viewed at least from within inside the program as, oh man, like this behemoth of an opponent anymore. Like they've seen that now. They've gone through it and they understand the magnitude of it, 100%. But I don't think they're going to go into that one as like, oh my gosh, like this is such an uphill battle. They're going to go into this game truly thinking they have a chance to win,
And
as
they
they should.
and they definitely have a chance to win. Penn
Yeah,
State, look, they get a lot of love and rightfully so because they win the games they're supposed to win.
but they
But
also
if,
lose the
if you
games they're
think
supposed to
about
win.
if you think how West Virginia played last year, now they match physicality. Penn State really had the talent to kind of blow them out of the water, and they didn't. West Virginia was
Yeah.
hanging around there early in the fourth quarter, so this is a much different West Virginia team. Again, we'll have to see how it plays out because they're going to scout West Virginia this whole offseason. They're going to see Hudson Clement. They're going to see all these guys on film now. See how it kind of
Do you
shakes
think
out.
that do you think that game changes much as say if it was played bowl season and everyone played no one sitting out obviously, but I mean do you think the outcome would have changed?
I wouldn't say in a bowl game, but if for whatever reason it was in November, it's a different game for sure.
I agree. I think it's a I don't think it's a blowout. I think it's one score max 10-point game. I think West Virginia hangs in there. Garrett Green obviously
I
had some
wouldn't be
games under
surprised.
his
I mean,
belt.
honestly, when you think about what Penn State became towards the end of the season, they didn't really get that much better. West Virginia got healthy and got better and got
Plateaued. Yeah.
gelled together throughout the year and figuring things out. So, I mean, I would, that's why I'm kind of a little optimistic Virginia can win that first game. Um, can they kind of my it always comes down to the final minutes. And again, it comes back to Garrett's going to be that guy. Is it going to be him just doing it all? I don't know if you can against Penn State defense. Does he have that kind of talent? Maybe he does. He's going to put in the work, without a doubt. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons why fans should be optimistic is Garrett's a leader and he leads vocally by example. He's going to get guys on the
Dude
field
wants to
out
win.
on the and they bring in other guys just like him. They're finding guys that fit the coach's mindset of being a competitor. That's why you'll hear Neil Brown talk about like I want guys to play multiple sports. Yes, play basketball, and he was just at a basketball game in Ironton, last week, probably 2 weeks by this point in time. But he wants to see them compete at everything. That's a big thing. So when you bring the guys that want to compete and want to win, it's a good recipe. And with a guy like Garrett Green that's leading them, I think you know they're always probably going to. I don't want to say always going to be undersized, but they're almost like the little engine that could. Like you might punch them in the mouth, but they're going to just look right back at you and punch you right back. So
Yeah.
I do
I
have
love
that kind of confidence in Garrett that 8 wins is probably my low bar for this team right now, but there's plenty of room for them to improve on that.
yeah. I mean somewhere between 8 wins and a national championship is probably where we're gonna land on our final
Well,
predictions.
that's not national championships not on my spectrum.
Not on the spectrum, not quite yet for
Playoffs,
Neil
look,
Brown.
they can make the playoff. You win the
Absolutely.
Big 12 championship, you're in the playoffs. I
And
would
and
think, unless it's just everyone has like 3 losses or something crazy.
and let's make this note too, because everyone keeps talking about the playoff and getting in. All they got to do is get in the top 12. Not necessarily. They got to get really into the top 11 because they're going to give that 12th spot almost every year to that group of 5 team. So the group of five has got an
Well,
automatic bid.
they have to qualify. There's got to be one
Yeah,
that qualifies. So
yeah.
that's
So
not necessarily given.
I think you really want to hang around the top 10 if you really want to feel good. Get to about the 8, 7, 8 spot, which is really asking a lot. But that's if you don't want any questions going into Selection Sunday when the committee makes their playoffs. So I don't know. That was a lot, but hey, it's a lot of
Theme of
fun.
the day:
Schedule.
consistency.
Yeah, consistency. Um, boy, getting 8 wins again would be very consistent. Getting a chance for another 9-win season. There's, like I said, there's opportunities for more. We're gonna have another mock prediction here probably in the spring. We'll do another one before the season starts. We're like,
After media day, we got
yeah,
after we hype everything up, we got to do another
yeah.
one.
We're like Todd McShay and Mel Kipe around here. We're gonna keep throwing these things at
Then
you.
fall camp wraps up. What we got? What we gonna do?
We'll have them on the daily at that point. Record predictions 38.0.
It's all Jaheim fumble today, 5-7.
Yep. So, anyways, that'll do it for us here today on Between the Ears. We thank you guys for tuning in to another episode with us crazy goons. We'll make sure we'll get back in the swing of it tomorrow as well. Make sure you hit that subscribe button at YouTube Mountaineers Now. Hit the like button and follow us on X at the same handle, formerly known as Twitter. So we'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Until then, take care.